And we are not born to die. We are born to rise.
Welcome to the La Casa de Cristo Sermoncast. We invite you to check out our website, lacasadecristo.com, for everything going on at the church. Also, follow us on social media under the username La Casa Family. Now, let's get into the sermon.
Easter Sunday. We all come from somewhere, from some place, and I'm not just talking about geographically. Some of us come here this morning with the certainty of the resurrection in our hearts. Others of us may think about it occasionally or in a time of crisis. Maybe we come struggling or doubting or seeking, and that's all okay because God has brought us all here. But as familiar as the story may be, as many Easters as we all have celebrated, there is still the unexpected. There is still the good news. There is still God coming into our lives in unexpected ways and on unexpected days. Now this morning I'm going to share with you a funny story, a humorous story about a pastor who was doing a children's sermon on Easter, much like I just did, but his didn't go so well. We call that in the clergy business a crash and burn children's sermon. And so he had this group of unchurched kids on Easter morning, and he was trying to teach them about the meaning of the day. So he asked them, "What do we celebrate today?" And one little boy raised his hand and goes, I know, we're celebrating Mother's Day today." And the pastor said, "Well, you're close, a couple weeks, but it's in the spring, but no, we're celebrating something different." And then a little girl raised her hand and said, "I know, Pastor, it's the 4th of July. No, not quite that. By now the pastor's getting worried, getting a little frustrated. He said, "Is there anyone who knows, what's going on today and what today is?" And another little boy raised his hand and goes, "I know, it's Veterans Day. This is the day we honor our veterans." He said, No, that's not it." And so the pastor was about ready to bring everything to a conclusion and just consider it a loss and have a prayer when one little girl raised her hand and she said, "Pastor," she said, "I know what today is all about. Today is the day that Jesus died and he was put in a tomb." And the pastor goes, "Oh, there is hope here." And she said they rolled a stone in front of the tomb. But on this day, we celebrate that the stone was rolled away. And he's like, yes, but he should have just ended the message then with a prayer, because then she kept going and she said, "And Jesus walked out of the tomb and he looked around and he saw his shadow. So he went back in the tomb, and that's why we have 6 more weeks of winter." The unexpected. I've had a few children's sermons like that myself. But as we come on this day of days, there are two things that I want to share with you that are so important on this day. The first one may be obvious, that this is the day when death is destroyed forever. Scripture tells us that the wages of sin are death, and we see that. You see, we come celebrating really and marking this occasion this day with a choice to walk in 2 gardens in our life. The first garden is the garden of our foreparents. It is the garden of Adam and Eve. They were given everything. But because of human sin and brokenness, that garden is the garden now of despair. It's the garden of our world. It is the garden that produces war and poverty and cancer and sin and disease and death and all sorts of problems. The brokenness of our world, that is the garden of despair. But there is another garden. And that garden is the garden outside of Jerusalem that my wife and I had the opportunity to visit 11 years ago. And there in that garden, there is hope, represented by this beautiful Easter garden that is behind me. That is the garden of hope, not the garden of despair. And as we gather on this day of days, the first thing that we hold on to is that death is destroyed forever. Death is destroyed forever. 2 days before he died, I had a long conversation with my father, and he said, Jeff, I know you're going to mourn me. I know this is coming to an end, but you've got to live your life because we will spend eternity together. That is the gift that we have. Those of you who come grieving this day, those of you who are anticipating grief, those of you who has lost loved ones, those who may be facing your own death due to terminal disease, death is destroyed on this day. And what we come to know and understand is this, that there is no power on earth or heaven that will separate us from the love of God. This is what Jesus has done for us. But see how the gospel ended this morning. The gospel ended with these words. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. The women were the last at the cross. They were the first at the tomb. But if you had seen a dead man walking, you would be afraid too. And it was so much so that in the early church, this originally ended the Gospel of Mark, and the church felt the need to add on verses after this, verses 9 to 20, because it ended so abruptly. But that's the reality of the resurrection. Resurrection is abrupt. Life is abrupt. And they said nothing to anyone because they were afraid, because they had seen a dead man walking. But you and I have that hope. You and I have that hope that one day we will all be together again. But there is one thing more. There is one thing more. Now, see, you thought the sermon was going to be short and that was going to be it, all right? There is one thing more, and this is perhaps most important of all, because this just isn't pie in the sky for when we die. This just isn't about what happens when we leave this earth. And we all know, although we don't want to acknowledge it, that that is true. Father Time is undefeated. No one leaves this earth alive. The scriptures say it this way: the grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of our God is forever. So what is this second thing that is so important to us in the here and now? After all, we need something to look forward to. Now, I know some of you are looking forward to Easter Monday when chocolate and Peeps are half off. I know that. But that is not the apex of life. What is it that we need? What is it that we need in the here and in the now? We all know what Google is. We need something, we need to go somewhere, we consult Google. Google, you might say, is the oracle of our collective conscience as a world and a nation. And you know, there are Google trends, and on those trends at various times, particularly times of crisis, various words appear. During the Great Recession and the financial collapse of 2008 and 2009, the word prayer began to surface on Google as the economy nosedived. And in March of 2020, as we all entered an unknown, the word faith began to spike as a trend on Google. But there is one word that has trended consistently for the past 5 years above all others. It is not politics. It is not AI. It is not some technological breakthrough. It is not some kind of crisis or situation. There is one word, and that indicates that because it has trended number one for 5 years, that it is more than a momentary spike, that it is a permanent condition. And that word is hope. People are looking for hope, but they're looking for it in the wrong places. And we're all looking for hope in our lives. We don't want to be in the garden of despair. We don't want to be there, but we doom scroll on our phones and on our computers. And we are negative and we insult one another. And that is not the garden of hope. That's the garden of despair. So where is that hope found? Our hope is not found, Psalm 146 says. Our hope is not found in our leaders, presidents, prime ministers, kings, queens, mayors, governors. It doesn't matter. Psalm 146 says, the princes of this world are transitory. The princes of this world are mortal. That is not where our hope is found. Our hope is not found in our health. One medical report can change that for you in an instant. Our hope is not found in our money. Money is a very uncertain God, and it goes up and down like this as the stock market gyrates. Where do you find your hope? You see, the stone needs to be rolled away from your life. We all have some large boulder, some large stone. When I saw a replica of that stone in Jerusalem and the size, it was a stone that 10 people could not move. It was so huge. And you all have something huge going on in your life. You may not want to admit it, but it's there. A fear, a worry, an anxiety, a dream, whatever it may be. Where does our hope come from? And who do we place our trust in? The world. The world is searching for hope. And we have a choice not only today, but every day, on Easter Monday, and in July, and in October, where to place our hope. And you can place it in the things of this world, and you will be sorely disappointed. And so, where do we place that hope? This garden put together by our volunteers and staff is a representation of the Garden of Hope. And my prayer is that you will choose to walk in the Garden of Hope. I believe in a place called hope. I don't believe in the negativity in this world. I don't believe in doom scrolling. I don't believe in that. And I have never posted one thing on social media that's changed anyone's life spiritually or otherwise, but I have had conversations with people about hope. And it is not just about the transmission of information. It is about conversations about hope. Will you walk with me through the garden of hope? Will you reject the garden of despair? Will you help turn the tide? Because if it's not us, then who will it be? In this world, in this nation, insults upon insults, divisions upon divisions. And will we walk through that garden of hope together? Reject the garden of despair. Walk through the garden of hope. I still believe in the garden of hope. I still believe in a place called hope because Jesus is alive. And we are not born to die. We are born to rise eternally and in the here and now. And that's because Jesus is alive. Will you join me once again? Christ is risen. Christ is risen. Christ is risen.